Welcome to the Always On podcast. I'm your host, Duncan MacPherson. Now, on this podcast, our objective is to enable our audience, which are very high caliber, fee-for-service professionals, to always be working on their business and on themselves, personally and professionally. On today's podcast, I had a very in-depth conversation with Elaine Christakos, a certified Pareto systems coach and consultant, working with some of the most sophisticated and complex teams in the financial services space. And in this episode, we talked, and I think we scratched the surface on the issues around team dynamics, evolving from just being an advisor with technical ability to being a CEO working on a business to drive scale, consistency, efficiency, and of course, enterprise value. I think you're really going to get a lot out of this chat. And if you do like this, please like and share and tell your colleagues. And if you have any ideas or topics you'd like to hear on this podcast down the road, just let us know. Thanks for listening. One of the biggest challenges for a financial professional, especially when they're striving to grow and even scale, is engaging, inspiring, and leading their team members to ensure consistency in the client experience, efficiency to make sure things don't fall through the cracks, and overall productivity, especially when it comes to bandwidth and plateau avoidance. And to go there and to really peel this back, I'm very excited to have a long-term coach and consultant with Pareto Systems with a specific emphasis on team dynamics, Elaine Christakos. Elaine, how are you?
I'm wonderful. Thanks, Duncan. Thank you so much for having me here. This is great.
No, my pleasure. And I know we talked about this extensively. I have so many conversations with advisors, and this is becoming a really big driving issue that either liberates an advisor to go to the next level or stalls them. So the first thing I want to ask you is, when did you start to notice the shift where a financial professional expanded their thinking beyond having a book of business to actually thinking of it as an actual business?
That's a great question. I mean, realistically, there's a lot of different metrics that come into play uh, to change that thinking for advisors, your lead advisors specifically. However, I'd have to say, like the COVID timing, the timing of COVID really did create a shift, right? Where all of a sudden we've got advisors and even various team members in different locations. Some of them literally moved, like literally left the cities that they were living in. And all of a sudden, the lead advisor is like really having to manage their business, really look at it like a business. Is it sustainable? Is it growable? During these times. And also I think like the team members as well have had a kind of a shift in their mindset too. It's like, this whole work-life balance, became even more important, and yeah, so the advisors, lead advisors, I mean, they could no longer just look at it as a book of business. It's like, hey, we need to look at this as a business. How are we going to manage?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, that disruption was incredibly revealing. And it also prompted us to really think about, what undermines growth, what stimulates growth. And I know we've talked about this too. Like many advisors had this eureka moment where they realized that relationship management doesn't just apply to their clients. There's a dual track. It also applied to their teams, whether or not it was remote or in the office. So I'm curious what you've noticed in terms of patterns, trends, or if you have any great stories around hiring, retaining, and sustaining team chemistry and harmony.
Yes. I mean, going back to the like COVID, especially the initial shock of COVID time, the one specific team I'm thinking of, they were in a very large city. 3 out of 5 of their team members moved. like moved away to different cities, and they're trying to maintain this cohesion, right? And those solid team dynamics through this. I remember one of the things they ended up doing is they had office hours where
Mhm.
like everybody on the team was on Zoom and they would just mute themselves, have the camera on, and they were all working. So if they had a question, they could pop in a question or, even, little jokes or, just ways of making it feel like everybody's there together. And they were able to keep a very positive team environment, through this, physical distance. So it's powerful to see how it worked. That lead advisor was definitely looking at it as a business and how do I manage it?
Well, yeah. And I mean, the enlightened advisor understands the whole concept of familiarity and loyalty fatigue. And if somebody is alone with their thoughts on a regular basis, they start to, you know, wonder about, am I on the right path? Am I in the right environment? And all it takes is one nudge in terms of, a headhunter, and they're vulnerable. So,
Well, sure.
yeah. So competitor proofing relationships goes beyond just clients. Now, something that I found to be incredibly counterintuitive with advisors who are trying to get to that next level was when we had conversations around, okay, look, you're shifting to being the CEO. So let's expand your mindset. And what emerged from that exercise is the dynamic of growing down, zooming out, and leveling up. Okay, so you think about this, and I know you've seen this extensively. You'd have an advisor managing, call it 500 million in AUM, with responsible for 400 clients. And then he or she decides, okay, I'm $1 billion team, currently at 500, but 0 to 500 is hard. 500 to $1 billion, less hard, but it's got to be, it can't be the same pattern. So we'd say to that advisor, okay, you're responsible for 400 clients. You yourself should manage 50, and then allocate the clients under the responsibility of a different person under your team, but using the same practice and the same process. That enables you to zoom out, look at your business more strategically, and then level up to get more strategic, more balanced, more purposeful, and move away from the weeds. So I'm curious about some of your insights around that mindset.
Yeah. And it is a mindset shift, right? Often what got the advisor to the place they're at right now, right, is not the same thing that's going to get them to that next level. Right. So sometimes I'll run into lead advisors that are just grinding it out. And if I could do more of the same, I'm going to get to that next level. But, as we know, people are not scalable. We have to have the processes in place. We have to have the team in place. We have to have everybody kind of in alignment, working with the same goal. But we do have to have that clarity on what are the goals. So the lead advisor, can I step back? Can I work on these 50 relationships and then have a great team behind me that can, look after and make sure that that process is followed through with all of these other relationships. It can be so incredibly powerful, but it does take a mind shift, right? It can be difficult for a lead advisor to say, hey, you know, I have to empower my team. I've got great people. I need to step back and let them do what they can do so that I can focus on, what I do great.
Yeah, that's excellent. And I think you have a unique perspective there because back in the day, before you were coaching and consulting, you were an advisor. And you were an advisor when the community of females in this space was a lot smaller than it is today. And it's interesting. I do want to touch on that because I know you have got a very interesting level of insights around the team dynamics with the gender. So hold that thought for a second.
Sure.
I do want to talk about uh, the concept and some of the distinctions around uh, hiring protege advisors and administrative staff, being mindful of chemistry.
If you're like most advisors, you're constantly balancing two priorities: growth and consistency. That's why we built the Turnkey Advisor membership, a community of like-minded advisors who understand the importance of working on the business, not just in it. Membership includes proven strategies for growing, teaming, scaling, or exiting, with full resources and support, including access to Pareto Academy, things once only available to our private coaching clients. If you're serious about bringing structure and scalability to your business, this is where consistent results are achieved. Learn more at paretosystems.com/turnkey.
You and I have talked about the rule of three, that somebody needs a very significant methodical vetting process before hiring somebody. And the rule of three is that everybody has to be interviewed at least 3 times in 3 different environments by 3 different people on the team to get consensus. And this is where the whole behavioral element seeps in. And I know this is a big part of what you do. So let's touch on that for a second.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's interesting because when a lead advisor, when somebody's hiring on their own and they don't engage others in the process, sometimes emotions can take over, right? I really like this person. I want it to work, right? So sometimes the more hard data gets kind of lost in the weeds because you're excited. And sometimes the person that you're talking to, like they do want the job. Legitimately, they do, and they want to be part of the team. However, that doesn't necessarily mean that their behavioral styles are going to necessarily mesh, right? So absolutely talking to other members of the team can be so powerful and important, vital in bringing in that right person. You'd never want to bring in a new team member that's going to, cause friction or, shake things up in a negative way. And, the profiling and combined with, talking to, numerous people or getting opinions of a few different team members before hiring, that could really alleviate some of those potential challenges. And
It's funny. I've experienced that myself, where my own confirmation bias, I can remember more than once looking at a resume, being very impressed, doing a little digging, becoming more impressed, then meeting somebody in an interview and saying, okay, this is phenomenal. This is perfect. And then other team members go through the process. And, there was a temptation for me to mandate, yeah, this is the person. But you can believe your own hype to such a degree. And then sure enough, another team member chimes in with insights and then compares and contrasts it to another candidate. And then sure enough, that was a better fit. And I think
sure.
as a leader, if I'm mandating, insisting, and undermining the input of others, that has another unintended consequence. Now,
Absolutely.
here's another thing I want to ask you, because I've seen this in our business as well. There's a chicken and egg around hiring. I've talked to many advisors who say, when we get to this level of revenue, then we're going to pull the trigger. And it's this cause and effect, build it and they will come, interesting concept there. So what is your perspective on that? When should somebody make a decision to add to their team?
Yeah, the answer probably most likely is now. So it's a matter of recognizing it though, right? When is if I want to, how do I want to scale up? How do I want to build? If the advisor is looking at, and that's not always the way they're going, right? Obviously, we talk a lot about scaling down as well, and honing in on that tight little group of clients and just living your best life, working with these best clients. That's fabulous. However, if they want to get to, if they want to grow and grow the team, and they see themselves more as a CEO, right? That's a different, obviously a different type of scale. And that's where they really need to look at intentionally identifying those team members that are needed and what exactly is going to help us get to that next level. So, for example, it might not always be another lead advisor. And sometimes or often I'll hear that people want to replicate themselves and, build out get another lead advisor. Well, realistically, that might not be what's needed. So we have to do a lot of insight examination of the existing role. Also, what are some of the unused skills in our existing team? Often people have got skills, abilities, knowledge, and aspiration beyond the current role that they're at. So it's very important to make sure that everybody's fulfilled, everybody is doing what they're good at, what they want to do, in alignment with the team, moving in the direction that you need it to. Um, but it really does start with defining, what it is you want, and then we can plan out like how to get there.
No, that's great. And again, that mindset, is it an investment or an expense? The cost analysis is obviously practical, but
Yeah.
ROI and taking the long view and making sure that every hire at the end of the day is designed to impact the client experience. All roads lead to elevating the client experience. That mindset can be very, very powerful. It's interesting.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, like you mentioned, intentional. I remember a while ago, an advisor was absolutely blindsided because he hired somebody for the team, and it was actually a role that somebody else on the team wanted, but
Sure.
didn't have, the, I guess, courage, whatever the case may be, to step up. Was kind of waiting to be approached. And sure enough, the advisor hired somebody else, and the person who really wanted that role checked out and was
Yeah.
gone.
Yeah.
And incredible. And of course, hindsight and then, revisiting that, realize that, oh my gosh, that was a miss. But I'm
Yeah.
sure you've got a lot of stories, the good, the bad, and the ugly, around
Yeah.
the move from being an advisor with technical ability working in the business to a CEO with strategic, and planning insights working on the business. Yeah. You want to share a couple of those?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's funny because I'm reminded of it's a little bit of a sideline, but I'm reminded of a team that was looking for a key position. So they had lost a key position, and they were looking for this right person, this exact right person. Um, this and talking to the advisor, she had said to me, she goes, I go to Starbucks downstairs in my office every single day. She goes, what I really want is somebody that's like that manager in the Starbucks. She's always happy. She's always juggling all kinds of different things at the same time. She's dealing with customers. Everybody loves her. That's the type of person I want. So we set out a strategy for, hey, like talk to her, meet with her. A lot of times teams will look at experience over alignment, right? This woman at Starbucks, the Starbucks manager, had zero experience in the industry, but she was philosophically, personally aligned that she turned out to be like an amazing key team member. And years later, she's doing amazing. And it was just so wonderful to see that kind of a meshing of of personality and alignment and philosophy, that kind of thing. But and and I'm just thinking on the other, kind of on the other side of things. Not everybody wants to be a CEO, right? People sometimes will get into this business because they love people, they love, they love the activity, they love everything about it. And then they keep growing and growing and they get to a point where it's like all of a sudden I have to be a manager. I have to be a CEO. I have to, engage, I have to build and engage a team. And the challenges, the challenges there is really defining, is it what I want? And if it is what I want, if you do want to grow the team to that point, then sometimes the answer is hiring somebody to take over those managerial role that advisor really doesn't like to do. Often we'll bring in a COO as one of the next logical hires for a team that really wants to grow and get to that next level.
It's funny. I remember way back when talking to a team, and I pointed to another company, another business, and I can't remember who it was now, but they had a mantra. We don't train our people to be nice. We hire nice people. And I'm bringing this up because that team went on to create an ideal client profile based on attitudinal qualities, assets and needs, and advocacy. And at the top of the attitudinal qualities it said, our clients are nice people. And I thought, okay, that is so perfect, because if you're going to make that client facing, show them that, because it's a great sifter. Anyway, my point is, later on, they were having some team dynamic issues. There was some conflict. And somebody on the team said, one of our problems is we have some people on this team who aren't nice. And I'm thinking, wow. And the lead advisor had this eye opener as well.
Yeah.
The point is, there are things that are teachable and things that are, for the most part, innate. There are qualities and skills, moral compass, and all of these different hardwiring qualities. And then there are things that are teachable. That Starbucks manager was hardwired to be nice and optimistic and pleasant. And people crave that. That is such a void. It's such an unmet need now on a team. So I
Yeah.
guess the moral of the story is strategy, tactics, core competency. Yeah, that's important. That's probably more teachable than some of the behavioral stuff, and being disciplined to not deviate or sell out, saying, okay, I'm going to go for this skill, even though their personality is not ideal. It can hurt you more than it can help you.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's and to your point about, the team, some of the team dynamics and the service model or having that ideal client, right? You can also have like an ideal team member description, and actually build out a certain service model for your team as well. Obviously depending on size, but it's so powerful to really know each individual team member. Listen to them, find out what their goals and objectives, to your point of that last one, really wanted to move up. You really need to understand that. And that can get lost again when you go from an advisor to CEO, right? That's one of the steps along the way that really needs to be, they really have to pay attention to it. Sometimes it can get lost along the way.
Well, and there's an art and science to culture. And I want to park that one too for a second and come back to that,
Sure. Yeah.
blend that in, because something else came to mind. I've been talking to so many advisors about the forced savings dynamic of working on your business and how that culminates in enterprise value. It's like slamming money in the bank, because you're just every time you work on the business, building out your people, your practice, and your process, it makes your business more valuable. Now, you said something to me where you said the degree of team retention and loyalty and commitment actually impacts enterprise value. So I'm curious, you've seen that firsthand. Just expand on that.
Yeah, absolutely. The well, I mean, there's a couple sides of it, but one side is the actual cost, physical, like monetary cost of hiring and training people, right? So if you've got a gap in your team, or you're bringing on bad hires or wrong hires, I guess is the more the term, right? It financially costs a lot of money, right? But the other side of it is every time you're putting a wrong hire in the team, you're creating a little bit of a crack in the team structure and the team dynamics. Potentially they're, um, the whole consistency and quality of the team, it strokes can slowly get almost eroded. The trust that the team has in the leader can start to get eroded as well if you bring on the wrong people, right? And there's so many different ways that we look at it. And it's not just, tasks and obviously, philosophical alignment and are they nice people? Is there a good fit? But we also look at, behavior characteristics and we do look at the profiling, look at motivational characteristics. That's so often overlooked. And we also look at the EQ, the emotional quotient of people as well. It's like, and all of these things together really create a fit. And again, like we talk about having a fit process for client, right? There needs to be a fit process for team members as well, every step along the way.
Okay, so I'm going to assume that the role of the COO, one of the hats they would wear would include HR, which is a study. I'm curious, what level of AUM does a team need to be at to make the COO role on the org chart non-optional, in your view?
Oh, non-optional. It's a bit of a chicken and egg thing as well, right? It might be more what the aspirations are of the team will determine whether or not we need a CO. It also can be a certain amount of the skill set of the lead advisor as well. The skill set and interest. I go through a process often with teams, and I've done this so many times as we've got like roles and responsibilities. And I always say like, hey, what are the roles that you're doing now? What are the ones you wish you weren't doing? And what are the ones that you wish you were doing? And we look at so if you do this, go through roles and responsibilities. Yeah, I'm 100% involved with HR. I hate it. You need a COO. Absolutely. Right. I'm 100% involved in HR and I absolutely love it. Awesome. Then hire out for the other skills for the other tasks that you're currently doing. Cool. We go through the total client engagement program. We go through an exercise of ideal life. And that's some goals and some aspirations for the individuals. There's an advisor that I've worked with, a team, incredible team. Like they've grown from basically a single advisor to I think they've got six advisors now. Huge bench strength on the team side of things. But the lead advisor loves the HR side of things. He meets quarterly with every single team member and goes through their ideal life. And it is so powerful. So he's always on top of, hey, is every team member are they fulfilled in their role? Do they have aspiration that we're not fulfilling that we can't? Are there things that we can work on? And it's so powerful to build such a cohesive and loyal team. Wonderful to see.
Yeah, that's powerful. Okay, so let's tie this all in. Now, you're working with some of the most sophisticated, complex teams in the financial services space. You've talked to me a lot about this alignment model. So I'm going to assume that a big part of the glue of that on the behavioral side is your expertise around DISC. So I'm curious, explain what it means to be a DISC practitioner. Explain to us how that gets applied and talk to us about the impact that has on culture, especially, and I might not be onto something here, or maybe I am, the dynamic around the female male dynamic in a growing team. Can you run with that?
Sure, sure. So, I mean, the behavioral profiling is, in my mind, absolutely vital to, to making sure that there's a full kind of understanding around, various team members. I'm not sure if it's necessarily even male, female, but I guess probably like often lead advisors are very driven, right? Very fast paced. They make decisions fast. They think fast. And, that's, which is wonderful. It gets them to where they are in the current situation. But often people on supporting roles, especially newer people, young people, and they do often, tend to be women, it is, they're not kind of built the same way, which is great, right? Because we need people to be detail oriented and, very much process driven and things like that. But there can be a disconnect, right? There can often be intimidation factor almost. And I've told advisors before, it's like, that you're bullying over your team. Right? And they're just like, what? It's not intentional, right? However, when you really get to understand like what it is about your characteristics, your behavioral style, your how you act normally, which is it's not a good or a bad thing, it just is. But really understanding it and how it can impact and connect with others can make such a huge difference. And, often I'll do the behavioral profiling and then I'll interview or, kind of do a bit of a debrief, help people understand what they're seeing on their profiles. And I more than once, more than probably 10 times, I've had the comment about, well, I can't really talk to them about this. And I'd be like, well, how come? And the answer is almost always a matter of being some version of being intimidated.
Mhm.
It's like, okay, what if how about if you approached it like this? Could I do that? Yeah, okay. So I'm talking on the one side, it's like, hey, you just need to stand up and talk to this person. And then I'm talking to the other side saying, hey, but you really need to lighten up or ease off a little bit when you're talking to this team member. Like it's so powerful. The understanding, like when people can really understand the styles of the people they're working with, they could adjust their own communication style. And it could also adjust their mindset, right? It might go from like a very fast-paced driven person, might come across as being, I don't know, to somebody that's like a little bit more slow-paced and detail-oriented, they might look at them and go, not a really nice person. Like, look at how aggressive they are. And once they realize it, it's like, oh wow, they're very driven and it takes a lot to get to where they're at. New appreciation for the styles. And that's only one part of what we do on the profiling, right? There's the behavior. There's, how we behave, visible, visible styles. Usually certain point, a person can be profiled just based on how they act, right? Over time, you just kind of figure out how to, where you can possibly place them. But the other side of things that we do in our profiling is motivators or drivers,
Mhm.
right? So it's not just how people act, but why. And that can be so incredibly powerful as a manager, as a team leader, like truly understanding what it is that drives your people. And quick answer here, it's not always money. Shocker, right? And that's, you know, that's something that that can really make a big difference. I'm thinking of a team one time. We had KPIs set up, like key performance indicators, and we had like the kind of the required and then the stretch goals, right? This team was very determined to have one team member really aim for these stretch goals. And it was this person wasn't doing it. Like she was doing all the regular KPIs. She was hitting all the required target, but these stretch goals, they were just like, they really wanted her to get involved. So they, kind of upped, they gave a financial monetary compensation for hitting these goals. Nothing happened. Then they're looking at it and looking at, well, it's just not enough. They upped it. And so there was like a higher compensation for hitting these goals. She wasn't doing it. And they could not figure it out. We went through the behavioral profiling. I came in like right about at that point. And like money was like the last thing that really drove this woman. And it's not that she didn't appreciate money, right? However, that's not what got her going. And so we figured out what it was that really motivated her, added that to the incentive structure. And next thing you know, she's hitting all of these stretch goals. Right?
No, that's a great insight. And the one thing I've learned on this from you is an advisor who is intentional and deliberate about adopting and deploying DISC within their team. It creates this lifeblood of respect. Like, I respect you. I'm going to give you the not the benefit of the doubt. I'm just going to try to understand what motivates you, what just what makes you tick. It's such a powerful force. Remind me the four quadrants of the DISC behavioral profiling. DISC. D is driver.
Dominance.
Dom.
Yep.
Here you go.
Yeah. Influence, steadiness, and compliance. Right. So there's two of those, the D and the I, are what we call fast paced. But it looks a lot like extroversion. Right. So a very high DI person is going to be incredibly fast paced. The I is a people oriented. Right. They're the ones that might be, if they're super high I, they're going to be maybe in the middle of a room telling jokes and engaging everybody in it. Right. The D is what we call task oriented. Right. So they're out there just like getting it done, and they might, delegate. They might be great delegators, but they're just like, here, just do it. The S and the C are what we call, they refer to them as slower paced, right? Steadiness and compliance. The steadiness is a people oriented characteristic. So the S, where the I's in the middle of the room telling jokes, right? The S might be on the side of the room having a very detailed conversation with a small group, right? Quieter. Looks a little bit like introversion, but it's really not. The C, that's the task-oriented, slower pace, right? They're the person that would be really happy to close the door and just let me work, right? So, understanding that about each person can just make so much difference, right? You can see how a fast-paced, people-oriented person and a slow-paced, task-oriented person could really clash if they don't understand or appreciate the qualities of the other person.
Most CRMs promise efficiency, but too often they just add complexity, more clicks, more confusion, and less time with clients. Toolkit CRM was built to change that. It's simple, intuitive, and designed specifically for financial advisors. What makes it different? Toolkit isn't just software. It's Pareto's best practices hardwired into your day-to-day process. It's the client experience engine that ensures consistency, elevates every interaction, and brings the Pareto philosophy to life in your business. If you want a CRM that actually works for you, instead of the other way around, take a look at Toolkit CRM. To learn more, visit toolkitcrm.com and schedule a no-obligation demo and see how easy it is to bring the best practices to life in your business.
Okay,
So
this is very interesting. And I'm also going to assume that that is not a one-off box check transactional pep talk to get a team to really buy in and understand the premise of DISC. Now I know, you've worked with some clients where you're their accountability partner to ensure that they execute, but you also have clients where you've effectively become their virtual COO because they've retained you for years. What's your longest client retained? Is it 8 years?
yeah, I believe we're coming up to 8 years right now.
Yeah, you see, that's next level. So I'm going to assume that as a virtual COO, you're basically part of the team, even though it's remote. So
Yeah.
you have this very deliberate, incremental, sequential approach. When a team really levels up on culture and team dynamics, and then shifts over to the concept of project management, getting everybody bought in to an initiative. I think what's very powerful, like I keep defaulting to Tuckman's model, right? The forming, the storming, the norming, and the performing. But what's interesting about the shift from advisor to COO is the fifth aspect of Tuckman's model, which is a journey, which is letting go. I've, I know you've told me stories about advisors who have had a tough time letting go. Not that they were trying to micromanage, but I think they were just sort of hardwired that I need to do this. Talk to me about how you've encouraged an advisor, giving them permission to stop doing something, to liberate themselves to do things that they really get paid to do.
Yeah, you know what? That's it is a really good point, and people definitely are all or a lot of different kind of approaches in that. Some, some advisors are thrilled when they can get to the point of, okay, I no longer have to do this, right? And they're just like, okay, I hired a technology person, so now I don't have to think about printers or new computers and stuff. They can look after all that. Others are panicked that somebody else is going to be in charge of the financial side of things. Like they're gonna buy things without me even knowing about it. So it's really a mindset shift, but it's so important. And that is something that is a point of discussion and that I have with teams, with leaders, especially on a regular basis. Have a great team. You've got this powerful team. Define their roles and then let them do it. Right? Don't try and get in. It can be difficult, especially when they build, how tough this business is to start out. And, some of these people that are in these advisors in these incredible successful positions, really started out struggling. It can be a very tough business. So I get that it's not necessarily easy to let go of certain tasks, but it is necessary. And, so that's part of the coaching and part of the, consulting. It's like, hey, like, what can we let go of? And sometimes we have to start with something pretty small, right? Get, whatever. The admin person now has $100 budget for office supplies or something like that. We might have to start there and then, work our way up.
Baby steps, right?
Yeah, it's for sure. Yeah, for
Well,
sure.
there's such a sort of conflict. Every entrepreneur wants to be brilliant at the basics and understand the inner workings of the business, but not major in minor things. I mean, it's one thing to know all the different tasks and roles and responsibilities of your team members. That doesn't mean you have to do them. It is so powerful in the spirit of beginning with the end in mind to try to make yourself obsolete so the business can run like a Swiss watch without you being there. You don't need to be present for your business to be productive. That is powerful. That impacts scale. That impacts enterprise value. Very, very powerful.
Absolutely.
I want to talk as we sort of start to wind down a little bit around an action plan. Like what a team listening in on this conversation could do to translate some of this into results over, let's say, the next 90 days. Let's go there, Elaine. Like how does a CEO set expectations, demonstrate respect and tolerance for, people giving it, their all. Let's talk about some of the things that they could actually deploy going forward.
Yeah. Okay, fair enough. So, like the CEO, number one, has to have clarity on what they want, right? And the direction, the firm, like where is the company going? Are we going to grow out and make this like a large corporation with lots of key people? If so, we need to define who those people are. Right? And that's so the first step is defining, what do you want? Where do you want to go? And then identifying those tasks that you as a leader truly want to be doing and are really good at and want to continue. And then let's figure out, okay, do we have the people in place to do those tasks that need to be done that I don't want to do? Right. So first, obviously defining those tasks and making sure that we've got those key people in place. Let's identify any gaps, right? Are there people missing from your team? Are there people in other roles that really want to be in these upper roles? So, definitely defining it and then interviewing your team and making sure that you've got open communication. I always say that if everybody's got positive intentions, right, communication can answer almost all challenges in
Well
a
said.
team. Yeah. So, excuse me, identifying those roles, identifying those people, finding out those gaps, and then figuring out an action plan for filling that in.
Okay, I know you've got some tools that you're either working on or that you can make available to advisors that want to go a little deeper down this path. I do need to say you reminded me of something. So forever we've been telling advisors, if you want to know where you stand in terms of how you're perceived and how you're described as it relates to client acquisition, make your clients the voice you listen to. Okay. Now I say that because not too long ago in my business, we had this sort of aha moment that, we should put our finger on the pulse and get a sense for how advisors are feeling. So I started several months ago in conversations with advisors at the end of the conversation, asking these three questions. Question number one, what does nirvana look like for you in the next 3 to 5 years? Like paint me a picture of perfection. Interesting exchange. Then the next question was, okay, what's lacking in your life? Like what's missing? What have you been putting off? Very revealing. And in fact, in some cases, Elaine, I've had advisors coming to me saying, I'm thinking about scaling up. And we've gone through this exercise
Yep.
and they've come to the conclusion that, maybe that's not for me. And they decided just to grow down and go from 300 clients down to 50, simplify their life to start doing some things that they've been putting off forever around their personal life and other pursuits. Okay. Very interesting. Last question. I then say, okay, zoom out and let's talk about the trajectory of the industry, the community you're in. Where's all this going in the next 5 to 10 years? And what that's revealed is some insights around blind spots and commoditization. Like, I got to tell you something around AI. Some advisors said, okay, I got to go all in with AI. They got so immersed. And we say, okay, to your point, AI, EI, let's find the sweet spot there. But what's powerful? So I read this story recently, and the story was called "The End of the Middleman." So here's how it goes: There's this gentleman in Florida who wanted to sell his house. He met with a couple of real estate agents, interviewed them. He was so underwhelmed, especially as it relates to when he realized how much it was going to cost, what they were going to earn on the transaction of his house. And he said to himself, my house is fundamentally sound, great location, great value, beautiful home. So he goes on to AI, he goes on to ChatGPT, and he says, sell my house. He didn't say, help me sell my house, sell my house. AI so he gave it the prompts, the parameters, location, square footage, all the details, things that he's done to the house and so on. AI listed the house, identified a plan to be found by potential buyers, wrote the contract, and took that home seller to basically the red zone for a few dollars versus, I think it was the 30 grand or something it was going to cost for an agent. And I'm looking at that going, oh my gosh, anybody who's in between, like as a middleman, a conduit between a manufacturer and a retailer, they've really got to reimagine their viability, their sustainability, and what makes them different and what will help them thrive going forward. So I know that's a little long-winded, but give me some ideas, give people who are listening some ideas and some tools that maybe they could go and find you on LinkedIn or reach out to get to know you better in some terms of some things you're working on with teams on a daily basis.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, by all means, I work with teams regularly, as you know. I'm always happy to meet new teams and help them through this process. Is it, even if you've got a problem in your team, we can look at it if there's a behavioral issue or a style issue, causing that challenge, even if things are good and you just want it to be that much better, which is probably more often what I see. Um, Wonderful. So I'd be happy to do that. We've got our tools of behavioral profiling and motivational profiling, EQ, like all of the different tools that we have available. And then also benchmarking is another issue or another area that I've really focused on, and that's like, what is the style of that next person that we need? And we actually can benchmark and say, okay, this is what we need, and then do the profiles for the new potential, hires, and match it. Like, does this match our benchmark? Yes or no? It takes some of the emotional, like we talked about, the emotion that can really come into play when you're hiring. But and absolutely. So we've got programs. We've got these team dynamics programs. We've got these behavioral profiling uh programs, and yeah, they can certainly reach out on LinkedIn, reach out through Pareto, and absolutely.
Yeah, excellent. Now, I know with some of your teams, you've actually, as a sort of a third party virtual COO accountability partner, on behalf of the leadership of the team, you've actually gone deep with team members to understand how they feel and how they perceive what it means to belong to that team. Are
Yeah.
you working on a document, a white paper around some of the questions you've asked team members to
Absolutely.
lead the room? Talk about that.
Yeah, that's a great point, Duncan. And in fact, very recently, I've been through a process with a very large, very successful team, um, and trying to figure out again gaps. What do we need? And there was some movement of roles that they were doing, and so we did some evaluation, and yeah, came up with these questions. 10 simple questions. Okay, ask all of the team members the same question, and then, we were able to compare and contrast and share with the leadership team. Phenomenal, like amazing results. And yes, I'm working on a white paper based on that, and, helping people, implement these types of questions and scenarios.
Okay, that's terrific. So maybe somebody could find you on LinkedIn and raise their hand and request that. And again, we keep talking to advisors saying, position your availability as a sounding board, as a service you're providing. You'll do the same thing if a team is complex and moving at lightning speed. If they want to have a sounding board, they don't need to become a client of yours. You will make some time just to sort of hear them out, what's keeping them up at night and what they're aspiring to. That's a really great service you offer. So
Absolutely.
yeah, everybody you can either go to paretosystems.com, schedule a call, and just request a sounding board conversation with Elaine Christakos, or just find Elaine on LinkedIn and that can get scheduled in. And if it goes nowhere beyond that conversation, I'm sure the interaction would be incredibly worthwhile. There's so much insight and experience here. There's things about team dynamics you cannot learn in a simulator, theoretically, hypothetically. Nothing beats mileage and experience. And Elaine, you've been doing this for a long time at a very high level. So thank you very much. And we'll have to do this again because I think we're only scratching the surface here.
Yeah, absolutely, Duncan. Thank you so much. My pleasure.
Yeah, mine too. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Always On with Duncan MacPherson, where our objective is to enable professionals to always be working on their business and on themselves. Want to learn more about Duncan and his team? Visit ParetoSystems.com. Don't forget to click the follow button below to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the hosts and/or guests and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Pareto Systems. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only.